Hello, welcome back. I am Savalian, a software dev slash creative, and today's video is about some of the visuals I designed for my game recently. My game, if you've been following along, is an auto chess game where the premise is that you're protecting this small Arctic town from monsters that want to steal its warm life energy. And up until now, there has been no town to protect. It was a metaphorical town. So my goal is to design what this town looks like, get some 3D models made, and put them into the arena to complete the scene. So the player actually has something that they can see that they are protecting and give the monsters a visible target. The town doesn't have any mechanics. It doesn't do anything. So the focus here is really just to add visuals and to round out the game world. Initially, I didn't sketch out the buildings, which might have been a mistake. You'll see why in a minute. But I just kind of went into Blender, my 3D modeling software of choice, with some vague ideas of what I wanted the town to look like. So I wanted the shapes to be weird, a little bit alien, a little bit fantasy. I didn't want like normal square snow cabins. I wanted to play up the idea that this is like a fantasy world where a magical guardian can summon critters from the ether. So my first attempt started with a lot of domes. I thought the most alien thing is to do away with hard edges altogether and make the buildings completely round. Doors and windows all round. As far as what kind of buildings, I knew I wanted some sort of houses, some homes, and then a watchtower. So the watchtower is kind of in lore how they identify the enemy waves that are coming in. Of course, in the actual game you just click and you go and there are enemies, but the watchtower is my way of describing how they get information about the monsters that are coming in, since they're kind of too dangerous to go out and interact with directly or look at directly. For colors, I wanted the walls of the buildings to be warm colors but not too bright, with some darker accents. One of the things I went into this with was that I knew I wanted the windows to glow with a warm color, so a bright warm color to contrast the sort of cool, cold world outside, to symbolize the lives of the town people that are in here that you can't actually see. I also have this fairly simple low poly style that I've been using for everything, but it was hard for me to decide how simple I wanted the buildings to be. I tried a few different things to spice it up, and I just wasn't really happy with any of them. I tried to make the walls look like they were made out of planks. I used my lazy UV sliding method that I have learned from some other game developers. I have a Skillshare course if you're interested in learning how I model game objects, game props. I don't have anything out about animation yet, but I plan to do like a character series. I just need to find the time. But if you would like to learn how I use Blender to make game props, you can check out my Skillshare course. The link is a referral link, but this is not sponsored. It's just a referral link. So you can use that if you like to get a little free trial. But basically, I slide the UVs around to get different colors on a big texture sheet. And so I tried some different colors. I have some emissive colors at the bottom. But in the end, these round buildings, I just wasn't really feeling them. I made them and I looked at them all together and I thought, there's got to be a better way. So the next day I did them again. This time I actually sketched out some of the designs on paper, and this was a much better idea. I had the chance to change things up and I liked the way they looked a lot better. So instead of going fully round, I made the buildings pentagon shaped. So they're unusual. It reads a little bit fantasy, but it's not the moon domes that I made before. I like these a lot better. The hard edges give the buildings a little bit more of a realistic feel, but not too realistic. I made the windows diamond shaped as well, so they're a normal shape, squares, but they're just offset to make them look a little bit fantasy. Yeah, the completely round buildings looked a little bit too much like this was a moon colony, like I mentioned, so I like these ones a lot better. I also did the watchtower differently. I had this idea to make the watchtower sort of the central place in town because it was how they sort of survived, by identifying these incoming monsters and preparing. And I got this idea to make the watchtower a place where they also store extra like magical energy. The idea here, in the lore that I'm still building, I'm still working through all this, but the idea is that they're using the energy to repel the monsters before the guardian shows up. So before the player shows up, they were trying to defend themselves, but as the enemies got stronger, it started to become not enough. Like, they were still taking damages and stuff like that, which is why they went for desperate measures and summoned this guardian to help them. But to represent the magical power stored in the watchtower, I just added some glowing lines along the edge. Looking back at them now, the lines might be a bit wide, it might be a little bit too pronounced, but in general I like where I went with the watchtower idea. Now once you have the models, it's time to import them into Unity. Now I talk all about export settings in my Blender course, my Blender to Unity game prop course, but the basic idea that you want is to have FBX unit scale selected when you're exporting from Blender. And then if you have any animations, there are a couple things. You want to make sure you only export the deform bones, and I prefer not to add leaf bones. That one doesn't matter as much, but I feel like it creates a really sort of cluttered armature if you add leaf bones. But those are kind of the settings I look at for exporting. And then importing, you can just drag it in to the asset folder and it sort of just works. You can go into the import settings there and change things if you need to. But once they're in Unity, it's time to get them in the scene. Level design or environment design has never been my main skill. I tend to do things by just gut feel. So I started dropping these buildings into the scene and dragging them around. Something I really want for this game is this hazy fog to make everything look kind of dark and magical and dangerous. So I also took this time to tweak some of the atmospheric fog settings, also to tweak the post-processing effects, because I realized that with the default lighting tab fog, emissive materials don't seem to work through the fog. It does dim the appearance of the emissive materials quite a bit, just as if it's any other ordinary material. So it wasn't what I was expecting to happen, but it does make sense now that I see it's happening. And I'm not really sure what to do about this. Because, you know, in a real fog, in the real world, a light would shine through it more so than just a flat, dark surface. And that's not what's happening, and I'm not sure how to fake that effect or how to get that emission coming through. I did a little bit of Googling and I didn't quite find anything that worked. So my compromise was to just adjust the fog down a little bit so that you can see some of the windows through the fog, and just adjust the post-processing a little bit more so that everything just kind of looks good enough. That's what I went for, good enough. I wanted to make sure that the forest was sufficiently fogged out, like sufficiently dark and spooky, but that you could still see the town behind you a little bit. And I think I got it pretty good. So I just went back and forth. I moved the buildings around. I played a little bit, and I flipped the camera around to look at them. I adjusted the bloom, and I added, I think, a vignette effect as well, just to add to that, you know, dark around the edges. I added some depth of field because I just love depth of field. I'm a huge nerd for depth of field. It's probably a little bit excessive, honestly. I'll probably adjust it down a bit, but maybe I won't. Maybe I'll leave it like this. But I ended up with something that I think looks pretty good. And that's basically it. This was kind of a minor thing technically, but I think it makes the game world feel a lot more real. For a while I was thinking I would add some little NPCs to the town, but I think that'll just be a little bit too complicated. Just imagine that there are people holed up in their warm little homes, hiding from the monsters. I think that, that's logical. That makes sense. And one thing I'm going to add later is a series of torches along this fence that the player can upgrade between runs, and they'll act as like a shield to the town, so the enemies will have to break through the torches, slurp all the energy out of the torches before they can advance. So I guess the town stuff is not entirely cosmetic. There's a little bit of function for some of these, but for the most part it's just a nice thing to look at and a way to world build and flesh out the world in this game. So that's all for this video, just a little glimpse at how I design and build and place game assets into my scenes. A little laid back, perfect, since I think this is going to come out on Christmas. Just the way that my editing timeline worked out. I love to do 3D modeling whenever I have a chance. I want to do more of it, but so much of the game is code that I need to write, and it's not as much 3D models that I need to make, so I love it when I get a chance to make some art. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to subscribe if you'd like to see more videos about game dev, art, creativity, things like that. I'm doing Game Dev December, but I recently decided to stop at Christmas instead of going the entire month, because I realized if I did go the entire month, I wouldn't get to actually rest on my work vacation. I am going to take this last little week to relax, go into next year fresh and rested. So I'll probably be done posting on Instagram for Game Dev December by the time you see this video, but all the other posts are still there. You can go look at them and see what I did this whole month. I actually got a lot done, and I'm very happy. So thank you so much for watching. I'll be back soon with another video, and I hope to see you there. Bye bye bye.